"You are foolish to think you can open a cocoa trading business here," the elder declared. His voice carried the weight of authority, and the villagers nodded in agreement. "No one in this village has ever succeeded in such a venture. What makes you think you're any different?" The words hit Kofi like a slap. His heart thudded painfully in his chest. Even his childhood friends, who once believed in his wild dreams, averted their eyes. The sting of their silence was louder than the elder's words. "I'll prove you wrong," Kofi said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his heart. The elder laughed. "We shall see." That night, Kofi sat by his mother's fire pit. The flames danced, casting flickering shadows across her wise face. She stirred a pot of soup, her movements calm and measured. "Mama," Kofi whispered, "do you think I'm foolish too?" His mother paused, then placed her hand on his shoulder. "Kofi, the baobab was once a tiny seed. Don't let their words bury your dreams." Her words lit a spark in him. He stood up, fists clenched with determination. At dawn, he set out to learn everything he could about cocoa trading. He walked miles, visiting every farm in the neighboring villages, but most farmers laughed at him. "Stick to what you know," one said. "Leave cocoa to the big merchants." But Kofi pressed on. One afternoon, he met Kwame, a wise and weathered farmer with eyes that held stories of battles won and lost. "You want to trade cocoa?" Kwame asked, studying Kofi's determined face. "Yes, sir." "Then sit down." Kwame's voice was gentle but commanding. "The first thing you need is courage. The second is patience. And the last, resilience." Kwame's words echoed in Kofi's mind as he began his journey. Days turned into weeks. He woke before the sun, walked miles to neighboring farms, and carried heavy sacks of cocoa beans on his shoulders. His hands bled, his back ached, but he didn't stop. Then came the storm. The winds howled through the village, tearing leaves from trees and flattening Kofi's precious cocoa plants. By morning, his entire harvest was destroyed. "I told you this was a waste of time," one of his friends sneered. Kofi sank to his knees in the mud, tears streaming down his face. For a moment, he believed them. Maybe he was foolish. Maybe dreams were meant to be buried. But then Kwame's voice echoed in his mind. "Laughter is just the sound of fear in disguise." Kofi wiped his tears and stood up. The storm had taken his harvest, but it hadn't taken his will. He borrowed money from Kwame and replanted the fields. This time, every seed he planted was a promise, to himself and to the doubters. Months later, the fields were lush with cocoa pods. Kofi stood proud, the smell of success thick in the air. But when he tried to sell his cocoa at the market, the merchants scoffed. "Your cocoa is worthless," one said. "You have no experience." Anger burned in Kofi's chest, but he held his tongue. Instead, he remembered Kwame's final lesson. When one door closes, carve your own door. Kofi loaded his cocoa onto a cart and traveled to a neighboring town. The journey was long and perilous, but he pushed on. When he arrived, he sold every pod at a price higher than he had imagined. Word spread quickly. Within weeks, merchants were begging to buy from him. The same people who once laughed now greeted him with respect. One morning, as Kofi walked through the village, Elder and Konso approached him. "Kofi," the elder said, his voice humble, "you have proven us wrong." Kofi smiled. "I just followed my dream, Elder." Later that evening, Kofi sat with Kwame under the baobab tree. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "You did well," Kwame said. "Thank you for your wisdom," Kofi replied. Kwame's eyes twinkled. "The wisdom was always within you, Kofi. I just helped you find it." As the stars lit up the night sky, Kofi reflected on his journey. He had faced storms, doubt, and failure, but he had risen above it all. To anyone who doubted their dreams, Kofi had one message. Storms will come. People will doubt you. But your success is planted in every decision you make to rise again. When they say you can't do it, smile and show them that you can.